Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Elijah Evans, and I am here today with Dylan Barnes. No Jeff today, but Dylan, our contributor at FutureSox, absolute beast on the White Sox prospect coverage, is joining me today. He's been on the show before. He's not a newbie. He's one of our regulars for sure. So excited to have Dylan on today, and we are going to do a little bit of everything. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to go through a few of the key storylines within the White Sox organization. First-round pick Hagen Smith made his affiliated debut this week. Brian Ramos got called up for a day, then sent back down. And there's some guys dealing with some injuries we're going to update you on, and then we're going to go through each level of the minor leagues. We're not going to talk about everybody. Me and Dylan each picked 10 players, so we've got 20 players between the four affiliates to talk about today. We're going to dive into just, what each of these players has been doing well lately, how they've been able to succeed, and kind of what we see moving forward for all of these players. So it's going to be a fun one today. Welcome in, Dylan. Appreciate you joining me today.
It's been awesome my last couple times on. I can't wait to come and do another one.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. The minor league season is winding down. So we are at a point right now where, we're recording this on August 28th. There's less than a month left for all the affiliates. Kannapolis and Winston finish up in 2 weeks, with Kannapolis set to be in the playoffs for Single A, which is super exciting in the Carolina League. It's going to be a blast down there. That team is really got a lot of talent, especially from the draft that I was just there able to see a few weeks ago. It's really clear that they're going to be, a threat to win that Carolina League championship this year. And then Winston is, there's some real excitement there now. There's been kind of an up and down season for Winston, but we've got more there than we've had all season. Birmingham, they're going to be in the playoffs in a rough spot right now. They've definitely lost, the majority of their roster throughout this year, which is not an easy thing to manage for the most part. But at the same time, they're, going to be in the playoffs regardless in a few weeks from now. And then Charlotte has about a month left in their season as they finish up right before the Major League season finishes up. As we stand today, Charlotte AAA is at 58-66 on the season. Birmingham is at 64-57. Winston-Salem is 55-66, and then Kannapolis leading the pack at 64-57, just like Birmingham. So we are going to dive into everything. The story that we're going to start with today, though, Dylan, the White Sox recalled Brian Ramos on Monday, and then immediately optioned him in favor of Jacob Amaya, who was claimed on waivers. Has been DFA'd twice in the past year, and the White Sox are going to be the third team to take a shot on Jacob Amaya. An interesting move. I think, the call-up got a little bit misinterpreted, I think, by the general public, because it was really procedural. They were always, when they claimed Amaya, the intention with Ramos was just him getting a payday for a day and filling a spot for that day. They were always going to put Amaya on the roster because they claimed him on waivers. Whether they should have claimed him or not is a totally different question. What was your initial reaction to, the Ramos call-up, which we both were excited about, but then figuring out that it really wasn't actually a call-up and it was just a roster fill for a day?
It was sort of weird because, it doesn't matter giving him a day of pay or not. He should still be on the roster. He's hit crazy over the past month, 2 months, where he's earned a roster spot. What has Jacob Amaya done in AAA that Brian Ramos hasn't done 2 times that? So it's just sort of I get wanting to give guys from different organizations or guys from the outside looks first. But when you have a talent like Brian Ramos that's just sitting there waiting, begging to get called up, I have no idea how you take Amaya over a guy that is literally or not literally in your backyard, but he's right there. He's on the 40-man. You've seen him already this year, and he's been better in his stint in Charlotte than he was in the 3-4 weeks leading up to his first call-up. So it just doesn't make any sense why they're going to give a guy who's been worse than Ramos at the same level in a arguably better hitter-friendly environment, why they're going to give him a shot over Ramos. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and on top of that, right, positionally, the White Sox, they're trying Vargas at third a little bit. They're testing out, moving all over with Baldwin at second and short. Sosa's been playing all over the infield a little. There's a spot at third base for the taking. There is no clear third baseman that has established himself as the guy for the future right now in Chicago. Brian Ramos has a 955 OPS in August. For reference to what you were just mentioning there, 955 OPS in August, an on-base percentage just below 400. He's walked half the amount that he's striking out, which is, not a great number, but for his standards in comparison to what he's done earlier in his career, a big improvement. He's walking over a 10% clip in the last month. He's striking out under a 20% clip. This is a guy that, it's always been his approach is needed to grow a little bit. It's never been terrible, but he's always been, you'd like to see a little more approach for a guy that's never going to be necessarily an elite hit tool. He's got some good power, he's got good hitting, but you need a little bit more from the approach. The approach has been really solid for a month and a half now, almost actually 2 months, frankly. His approach has been really solid throughout July and August. He's getting into his power, 6 home runs this month. This is the guy that can, and he's a good third baseman, right? That's something that we've really seen over the past 2 years. Is this the guy that's really developed at third base? this could be your third baseman going into 2025, and you're not giving him the chance to get a taste of that going forward. And I think part of the argument is like, it doesn't matter. The White Sox, the season's over. It's irrelevant what happens. And like, yes, sure. But a month of big league experience can do a lot for a guy's confidence and for their learning going into season next year, where we're going to have a team that's half rookies, right?
Exactly. And the sort of like, oh, well, the season's over, so it doesn't matter anyway. The season's been over since May. Why does the extra 3 months matter? So like, if you're gonna give rookies a shot from other organizations but not your own, it makes no sense. And I think that's something that we've been saying a lot this year, because we just don't know a lot of what the organization's been doing, and we just don't agree with it, which, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. And we're gonna say the same thing about a lot of guys we're gonna talk about when we get to Charlotte in a little bit, because there's plenty of other pitchers too. In addition to Ramos is kind of the clear, obvious hitter who has an opening, he has a spot, he's been playing well, right? Like, you can make a case for some other guys on the hitting side, but generally he's the clear guy on the offensive side that like should be in Chicago. We already got a taste earlier this year, right? But on the pitching side, there's 5 to 7 names we can name that really should be getting a chance at this point. You saw Brebbia finally got the DFA, and it's a Prelander Bergolla back and forth, who's been back and forth all season. And it's nice to see Bergolla. He should spend the rest of the year in the bullpen in Chicago, right? But there's plenty of other guys on the 40-man, not on the 40-man, all of the above, that deserve a chance in Chicago down the stretch, and we're going to get to those guys soon. What we want to do before we dive into all this stuff, though, is talk a little bit about Hagen Smith. The White Sox first-round pick, 5th overall this past year, was a surprising pick to all of us. When the last time we did our draft special together, we were both like, this is surprising, but this is also the type of pitcher that Bannister loves. He's going to be this, the White Sox have the 2 best left-handed pitchers in the minor leagues right now, which is pretty incredible to say, and really just going to be a blast to watch these guys grow the next year or two, and, potentially could both be making their debut next year. What was your initial thoughts from Hagen's first game in Winston this past weekend?
I mean, it's exactly what we've seen from Hagen Smith all year long. It's dominance, it's weak contact, it's the fastball slider mix, keeping guys off balance. It doesn't matter what hand they are, you can't hit anything. I think he had 4 strikeouts in 3 innings.
Yep.
So it's just more of the same. It's business as usual for Hagen. I'm sure that the talent in high A is maybe a little bit worse than SEC baseball than what he's used to. So I'm sure that it was sort of like just another day for Hagen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is a guy who, if he's going to dominate at that level, I think this is the guys he's facing there. Some of them are probably less advanced than guys he faced in college. But for those listening that didn't get a chance to watch the FutureSox page, Ian Eskridge has the highlights up. You can see all the big, pitches he made. 3 innings, 2 hits, 2 very soft hits for reference. Like both those hits were like little flares that just barely caught the edge of the bat. Like they were barely hits, I'll say. No runs. 1 no walks, 1 hit by pitch, and 4 strikeouts for Hagen. So a really good first outing, encouraging. It sounds like he's going to go no more than 3 innings in all of his starts. I think he's going to make 3 starts down the stretch with Winston. They have 2 more weeks of their season. He's going to finish his year with 3 starts of 3 innings each, 9 innings, right? Very small taste. There's a chance. I wouldn't rule it out that he could get a game in Birmingham after finishing 3 starts in Winston if things go really well. But at the same time, right, like, I mean, we've heard Brian Bannister really preach that he doesn't believe in deloading and getting guys, a huge rest period. He wants them to continue throwing. So I like that he's throwing right now, and it is on par with the way they've treated most of their pitchers. So it wouldn't shock me to see 1 Birmingham start after Winston. But either way, 3 starts in Winston is going to be super fun to watch, just even in limited spurts. Like, it's such an aggressive approach and angle that he throws at, and it's just so, like, I can't imagine being a left-handed hitter, especially, and having to face that the way it's coming in at you. It's pretty ridiculous stuff. The slider and fastball are as good as you're going to get, and this is a guy who's gonna continue developing stuff, right? Like, he has a changeup, he's worked with some other stuff. Definitely could see him as a cutter candidate. He seems like he could very much fit that Garrett Crochet mold of what Bannister's done with a lot of these pitchers, which is add a more movie-based, fastball, kind of an in-between to his slider and his fastball, right? I could see that. I could see him messing around with, it seems like a lot of this draft class have been messing around with a splitter. Wouldn't shock me to see him kind of just continue to tweak and figure things out. But either way, it is one of the best fastball slider combinations you will ever find in minor league baseball. And it's a guy who, is going to move quick. He will definitely start next year in Birmingham, in my opinion. Yeah,
I think that the idea of him going to Birmingham this year isn't out of the question either, especially with their playoff run that's coming up. I think that with the rotation that they have, it's good enough where I could see all 5 of them going and winning a playoff series. But if you can add Hagen Smith to that mix, like, I'm sure that John Eli is salivating thinking of adding him instead of, or not even replacing anybody. Let's say that like Nastrini or Burke goes up, like we're going to talk about here in a bit. you take one of the guys from Birmingham, toss them up in Charlotte, and then there's a hole in the Birmingham rotation as well.
Yeah. And you could always just piggyback if Smith is only throwing 3-inning games, you could always start him for 3 and then go into. I'm sure a guy like Gowans or Schweitzer could come in behind a Hagen Smith and be really effective in long relief, right? So there's plenty of options there. But generally speaking, it's great to watch him. I will be watching every start he makes in Winston the next few starts, just because there is just so much talent there. And we're going to talk about other pitchers later, but another high end arm and a guy that I have as my number 2 prospect in the system. I know we just dropped our FutureSox top 30. I want to mention that before we get into anything else. Everybody should definitely go check that out. Our consensus top 30 from our staff. We all ranked our players, made it into kind of a consensus ranking of our top 30 prospects within the White Sox system. Hagen Smith comes in at number 3 in the consensus. He's number 2 on my personal list. Where was he on your personal?
He was 3 on mine.
Okay, so he's a top 3, 4, right? Yeah, pretty obviously top 4. There's a pretty clear top 4 among all of us, I think. It's the 2 through 4 shuffles a little bit, but Hagen Smith is about as good as it gets in terms of talent. It's going to be exciting to watch him continue to develop. Before we get into all of our 20 players that we're going to talk about, I want to provide a few injury updates because there is some high level prospects who are dealing with some injuries. Edgar Caro is, when I saw him in Charlotte, he went down. He got scratched on the Wednesday I was there in Charlotte, the second game of the series. I asked him, I was like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? He was like, oh, just the back soreness. It sounded like he was not too worried about it. Turned into an IL stint. He was hoping originally that he would avoid the IL and just miss a few days. He's been on the IL now for a little under 2 weeks. So it's a little bit concerning there. I think there's a little more to it than simply back soreness. But at the same time, like the way I look at it, I don't know how you see it, but like the way I look at it is he's had such a good season and made so much progress. Charlotte's out of the playoff picture. It's the end of August. Give him the time he needs. If he can get some more games later in the season, great, but zero reason whatsoever to push Caro at this point.
Yeah, I was sort of in the same boat. Like he can't get hurt. Like outside of Colson Montgomery, he's like one of the highest upside. He probably is the highest upside bat in the system. Like that's ready to come up within the next year and a half. So if he pushes it and ends up getting like a severe back injury in a season that he's not going to get called up in, it's the end of the year. It would just be a horrible look for like the organization. I mean, not for the organization, but like it just wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, he will probably. It might come back at some point later in the year. Take it easy, maybe DH mostly. But at the end of the day, especially positionally, like this is your catcher of 2025, hopefully, right? Like the goal is to have him be starting a catcher next year for much of the season, if not all of it. So you got to take your time with him. Mason Adams is another guy that is dealing with an injury, also a back injury from his first start in AAA. He got pulled in Louisville 2-3 weeks ago. What was that when he got up to AAA? Has been out since then. It sounds like Mason is throwing live bullpens. I know that he's kind of expected to hopefully get back on the mound and make a start this week or next week in Charlotte. So great to see that Mason is working his way back. He's definitely in full throwing stuff right now and everything. So hopefully we're going to get to see at least 3-4 starts down the stretch here from Mason Adams in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think that if he didn't have that injury, I think he's a prime candidate for a shot in September with the White Sox. But now, unfortunately, like Caro, you don't want to push it in a season that's already lost. So I think just get him his last couple starts in Charlotte, and then have him be under the expectation of, hey, you can win a role out of spring training, because he absolutely can.
Yeah, 100%. This is a guy that we expect to be in the White Sox roster at some point in 2025. Maybe not out of the gate. He'll have a shot for sure, but he's definitely going to be a major league player in 2025. So you give him the time he needs. It sounds like he's working his way back and feeling really good in throwing condition this week. So I'm excited to get a few starts of him in Charlotte, but I ultimately don't think it kind of rules out a call up for him this year, because of the injury. Now it's already, you're going into September, making his second start only in Charlotte. So probably rules that out because of the injury. But at the end of the day, you didn't need him to come up this year. You're going to be happy to see him whenever he comes next year. The last injury guy to mention is Seth Keener, who has been out for a while, but he was really starting to figure some things out. Some of the starts I watched from him in Kannapolis before the injury, he really looked like he was starting to tap into his stuff a little more and find more confidence in locating. Command has always been the thing for Keener. Like his stuff is going to play, and it has played all year at the single A level. But now he comes back and gets a promotion with all the stuff that's happened and so many pitchers going up to Canny recently. Keener is set to start on Friday in Winston-Salem ahead of Hagen Smith. So all of a sudden you've got two really fun draft picks from last year and this year pitching on a Friday-Saturday schedule now in Winston down the stretch, which is super exciting to see.
Yeah, and then you follow that up with Aldrin Batista on Sunday. Like that's just an absolutely nasty Friday through Sunday starter mix. And Keener is a guy that I think that if we didn't have this sort of gluttony of starting pitchers that he would have already been in Double A by now. But there's literally just no room for him because he's advanced for the level. He was too advanced for Single A. He was making some of the hitters look like junior high batters going up against a varsity pitcher. Like he was so good in Single A, and I think that's he is one of the reasons why they're in the playoffs. How they won the first half is because of him, because he had like a under 3 ERA, like pretty easily. If I
and with command issues too. That's what's interesting, right?
Exactly.
Like, this is a guy who was still figuring out his command. I mean, he had been a reliever at Wake Forest, so this is someone who is still trying to learn how to be a starter. This is his first season really being a starter at this level. Had a 3.3 ERA down this season so far. I mean, 75 strikeouts across 64 innings. The stuff is there for sure, and the stuff is going to continue to be there. Great fastball, gets a lot of ride on his fastball, in addition to a slider that can be wipeout at times. This is a guy who, yes, there's so much talent on this roster, and on this organization, but he is another pitcher to keep an eye on, and it's going to be fun that trio in Winston is going to be real fun the next few weeks to watch.
Definitely.
So that is another guy that we're happy to see back out there. Let's dive into our players. We're going to start in Charlotte. We're going to work our way down. We've got about somewhere between 3 and 6 players at each level. Certain ones being highlighted more than others. Some players we're just going to, these are all guys that have been playing well lately. Some, have for different reasons are on this list. We've got a good blend of, some retained prospects, some guys that have really stepped up recently, some new draft picks that we've got into the mix, right? Like this is a really fun group to discuss today, and we each picked out 10 of them. So we'll start in AAA, Dylan, and we're going to start with the 2 starting pitchers that, there's a pretty good shot we could see, one of these guys, if not both of these guys in Chicago. And if it was our choice, I think both would probably get some run in Chicago in September, but that's not up to us ultimately. But we'll start with Sean Burke. Sean Burke has been really good lately. He is someone that, I was able to get a really good start of him when I was in Charlotte, and just watching him behind the plate, I kind of sat down, me and Jeff had gone down and watched his pitches from the right angles, from all the right spots, right? And like, the stuff is really lively. When Burke is at his best, the fastball up in the zone has a ton of ride to it. It really gets in on hitters and makes them uncomfortable. The slider, the curveball especially, the curveball is his bread and butter. This is a guy who has been working on all 4 of his pitches. His changeup has developed a lot. He talked to me after the game about how, a big key for him has been that changeup. If he can get that changeup in, especially against left-handed hitters, and get it in the zone, it sets up his breaking ball so much better, especially really gets that changeup or the curveball, to just play at the very best of his ability low in the zone, because when that curveball is dropping in there at the right below the zone, it is really hard to hit. Burke is a guy that, he has had some command issues still throughout the season, but it's been the best month of his season, in my opinion, in August for sure. He's really started to, the results may not necessarily look quite like it, but, no more. He hasn't had these blow up starts. He's 3 or less runs allowed in every game since July 5th. His last 7 starts, 3 or less runs allowed. None of them are perfect. He still has some command left. In August, 8 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts in 4 appearances, all being less than 5 innings too. So really exciting stuff. I like what I've seen from Burke. Where are you at with Sean Burke and kind of what the rest of the season looks like for him?
I mean, he's just a guy that has always been plagued by injuries. He's had crazy stuff. Like the fastball can get up in the upper 90s, and you mentioned the curveball. When it's on, it's a great pitch. But like you said, the command has always been the key. But the past 5 starts for Sean Burke, he's got 11 walks, or excuse me, not 11 walks, 8 walks in 22.1 innings pitched. So it's a walk rate under 10% and a K percentage of 38.6%. Just absolutely nuts. Yeah. So he's a guy that I think if he was healthy the whole year, I think he would have also got a shot in Chicago at some point. And I'm not saying that he hasn't, or it's out of the picture that he isn't going to get a shot this year, because he probably could. With Kai Busch going back down, there's a shot in the rotation for him, and he could be the guy.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, his stuff is electric, and that's something we've always seen from him. You got to remember with a guy like Burke too, like he was supposed to debut last year. When he going into 2023, he was viewed as like one of the guys on the way for the rotation when someone goes down or anything like that. He dealt with a shoulder injury that really, he told me himself multiple times, like he was not himself all of last season. He did pitch for a few months early in the year, but he wasn't right all of last year. It's almost a wash year for him. Coming into this year, gets himself healthy, was rehabbing, coming off a shoulder surgery, all this stuff. It took a little bit of a slow start, right? Like in May, even into June, he's had some ups and downs for sure coming off the surgery. But the stuff lately has been playing as well as it has all season, as well as it ever has for him in the minor leagues. And he looks like someone who, it still remains to be seen if he can be a starter at the next level. I think the command and the long counts sometimes can get on him, and he can't always go in super deep into games. But at the very least, it's a major league arm. His stuff is major league for sure. I've been saying this for a while. I think he should be the piggyback for Crochet, because I think his stuff in a shorter spurt, and when he doesn't have the pressure of going a full start, if he knows he has 3, maybe 4 innings, his stuff is electric, and it's been really, really good lately. Give him a shot to kind of get some of those innings, even if he's not necessarily starting at the next level quite yet.
Yeah, and I think I tweeted something about this a couple weeks ago. If Crochet isn't allowed to go more than 3-4 innings, why do we not have a piggyback up? And I think Sean Burke is a perfect candidate for it, because like Crochet, or not like Crochet, but like a young starting pitcher that hasn't had MLB experience, he's going to have control issues, and it's sort of masked when you're going 3-4 innings, and especially when you're following a pitcher like Garrett Crochet, where it's just nasty stuff, and then you follow that up with more nasty stuff in Burke. It would be a really fun game if you can see Garrett Crochet and Sean Burke just punching
very
out
different
guys
pitchers
right.
too, which is fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, very style of pitching, but in a cool way. So I think he deserves a shot, really. I think this is a guy that's worked really hard to get back to his best form coming off the injuries and everything he's been dealing with. He is set to, we're recording this on Wednesday. He is scheduled to start Thursday in Charlotte. There is also a TBD in Chicago for Thursday. We'll see what happens. I could see it different ways. It also could potentially be a guy in Nick Nastrini who's set to throw Friday in Charlotte. Where are you at with Nastrini? We had this hilarious interaction where when I was in Charlotte, I talked to him. He talked about a mechanical tweak from a tweet that I knew when he was saying was your tweet, which is pretty incredible to see. But in general, like, this is a guy who's clearly working on stuff and working through what he's dealt with. And he looks as good right now as he did in spring training when he was set to win a rotation spot.
Yeah, in his 4 August starts, he's thrown 18.1 innings pitched, which one of them got cut short due to an absolutely just mind-boggling injection that cut his start. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. It shorted 2 1/3 innings. But in those 18 1/3 innings, 2.45 ERA, 18 strikeouts, and 6 walks. The 6 walks is big, because we saw how he was sort of all over the place in his MLB appearance. In early on in the season, like May, June. But in August, it's a 7.8 walk rate, which is doable. It's not like he's not going to ever be a guy like George Kirby, where he's walking like 3-4% and striking out like 30-35. But I mean, he could be a 30-35 guy, but also walking 10%. So it's kind of like give and take. But anyways, he's been looking great recently, and I think that he's earned every right to say, like, hey, I'm here. You guys need a starter. Bring me up, because the command has improved. It's been better. It's been better recently than it was in spring training too, which is weird that he's not already up with the team. But I digress.
Yeah, I think you're trying. They don't want to push it because it has been a rough season, and Nastrini will acknowledge himself that, like, he's had command issues and he's had a lot of issues trying to find the zone consistently with his just steady trying to get every pitch in the zone, and it hasn't been there much of the year. But he looks a lot better lately. I think they don't want to push it because they want him to continue on this trend. I still think we could definitely realistically see a September call up for him and get some innings. It could be tomorrow. There's a chance, but in general, like, it's just better stuff from him. His last 3 starts especially have been really strong. 1 run in each of those 3 games. Just generally looks more comfortable. His velo's up, which is another thing to note. Like, he's now sitting in the 95, 96 range as opposed to early in the year, especially when he was in Chicago, where he was more 93, 94. So the velo's up. I saw that in person. He looked like he was more confident throwing the fastball in different parts of the zone, able to get it in the right spots more often as opposed to kind of missing with it significantly. He's missing slightly now, but it's not necessarily the same, way out of the zone misses. He had a lot of misses early in the season, whether it was with Chicago or with Charlotte, where they were just uncompetitive pitches. Now a lot of his misses are still competitive offerings, at least, and you're still going to get some swings on those. So, a lot of improvement from Nastrini, and someone that I think it's been a rough year, and it's almost somewhat of a lost year. I wouldn't call it quite a lost year, but it's been tough for him. Is a guy who you were hoping was going to be a big league rotation piece this season, and it hasn't been that. At the same time, I think he's setting himself up well right now to go into 2025, forcing, trying to make the roster and having a real shot to get either a long relief or a rotation spot for the White Sox next year.
Yeah, and I think with the velo coming back, I think I saw a report like a couple weeks ago that he had pneumonia like early on, or not early on in the year, but like midway through the year, and he lost a ton of weight, and that can be a big factor for a starting pitcher that's already struggling with command, and then you lose a bunch of weight, you don't have your legs under you. It's not a recipe for success. And now he's feeling good, feeling healthy and strong. Like it's a perfect storm. And I think that we're seeing the Nick Nastrini that we were expecting this year.
Yeah, 100%. So we're excited to see kind of where the things take him. And I think he could be a Chicago candidate. And either way, he's setting himself up for a much better 2025. The next two guys, we'll talk about them together a little bit, because they're two pen arms that we definitely, are in this boat of like, why are they not in Chicago? And that is Trey McGough and Adisyn Coffey. These two have been excellent. I think there's really no other way to say it. Like, they've just been incredibly sharp in AAA. They have been some of the anchors of the Charlotte bullpen. They're both older guys. My biggest thing with these two is like, why are we not seeing them? We've got guys in the White Sox bullpen, like we've talked about, that just aren't producing. And at the end of the day, it almost just feels like they're continuing to save money as opposed to having to pay these young guys right now.
Yeah, since the Eloy Jimenez trade that brought McGough to the White Sox, McGough's thrown 14 innings, a 1.29 ERA, and since Coffey was promoted late May, 27.2 innings of a 1.95 ERA. Like, and in AAA, that is unheard of. Like, you see the rest of Charlotte's bullpen, its ERAs above 5, 6, 7. Like, these guys have genuinely been some of the best pitchers in the entire organization this year, and they just aren't getting recognized. I get, like, yes, you want to give the older guys a shot earlier in the year just in case they're trade candidates, but it's past the trade deadline. They're still on the team. Like, why is Justin Anderson pitching? Like, nobody wants him. Clearly, if somebody wanted him, somebody would have traded for him. But yeah, just. Yeah.
No, you're completely right. I wrote a piece on McGough from talking to him for a while in Charlotte. You can go check out on FutureSox.net. It really described kind of who he is as a pitcher and what he's been working on throughout the season. Both these guys have been great, though. I mean, McGough, to add on some of those numbers, right? 7 hits allowed in his 14 innings with the White Sox organization. So since he came to Charlotte, 7 hits allowed, only 3 walks. So he's given up 10 base runners in 14 innings pitched. It's just, I mean, and Coffey, right? 30 strikeouts in 27 innings with Charlotte. He has 7 saves too. Like, he's been in high leverage as well. These are two guys that Coffey at 25 years old and McGough at 26 years old. Like, there's no more waiting, and there's no. You don't protect service time on a 25, 26-year-old reliever. That's really not something you have to factor in. Relievers are really volatile. They're both having great seasons. Give them a taste of the big league so they can see what it's like to face big league hitters before they go into next year, with hopefully both these guys being locks to make the White Sox bullpen. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be, right? Like, where is the lack of them proving something? I don't know. I think, like we talked about, these two have been excellent all year. They both deserve a shot in Chicago very soon, if not now. They continue to just impress. When I was there, I got to see both them pitch twice throughout that week in Charlotte, and they're both really good. It's really good stuff. It's solid stuff. It's consistency. It's, McGough, it's a little more command. Coffey, it's a little more stuff, but it's just good all around from both of them. And I think they're both guys we're going to see in the bullpen moving forward. Going on to the hitters, two hitters to talk about in Charlotte before we go down to Birmingham. The first one's Colson Montgomery, and we'll keep this one brief because I know we do discuss Colson all the time on the show. But in my opinion, Dylan, I have seen some solid at-bats from Colson lately. I think the past few weeks, and I know the numbers don't necessarily show it, but in general, from a few of the games I saw, in addition to this past week, he had a really nice game yesterday. There's some good signs there, and I think it was nice to get to talk to him and hear a little bit about where he's at, because he does sound like he's remaining very level-headed, and it seems like he, whether he says it or not, and the organization in general have kind of accepted the fact that this is a growing year for him. He's had to learn a lot. It's the first year he's dealt with challenges, and that's okay. That's an okay thing to happen, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still expect him to be a huge piece of this team moving forward.
Yeah, it's the first period in his entire life, honestly, going back to high
Yep.
school, junior high, that he isn't the clear-cut best player on the field. And
Yeah.
he's dealt with the adversity, and he's been like he's handled it well. He's been talking to the media like he's a seasoned vet, saying like, "Oh, it's part of the game," which it is. Because if you don't have this adversity, then you come up to the big leagues and you're expecting to OPS 900 right away,
Yep.
unless you're like an incredible talent, which Colson is. I still think that. I still believe that. You're not going to start. You're not going to start your season being one of, or not. You're not going to start your career being immediately one of the best players in baseball. And Colson's handled it well. Like he's not like hanging his head. Like he's still going out there putting up good at bats consistently, and he's been playing a better shortstop than I think a lot of us have expected for him this year and even in years past. Like this is a guy where we were thinking like, oh yeah, he's probably going to move to third, and then he's been working on it so much to where I think that he's probably put any idea of sliding to third base out of my mind at least.
For now, I think
Yeah,
it's for
yeah,
now. I think you hope that remains the case for sure. But at least right now, you see a guy that can play shortstop in Chicago next year at least, and at some point next year, whether it's the beginning of the year, whenever it is, right? Like he's gonna get up next year at some point. I think that's pretty unquestionable at this point, right? But like this year, I've said this time and time again, but this year, the him going to AAA off the bat was putting the expectation up in everybody's mind that he's going to be in Chicago this year.
right.
And that was a little bit of an unfair expectation at the end of the day because he's really young. I don't know if you know this one. I said this last week with Jeff. He has less than 150 affiliated games going into this season
Yeah,
under his belt, right? So,
yeah,
like, that's not a lot of games. Like, most guys coming out of high school, especially, have 300 minor league games under their belt before they make the major leagues, right? So, like, I get it. You want to see this guy. He's the top prospect going into the year. You want to see him in the big leagues. Let's give it some time. This year has been rough, but I still think there is a lot of positives. You're still seeing the impact. You're still seeing the exit velo for a guy like Colson, right? Like he still crushes the ball sometimes. You just got to see it a little bit more often. I'm not too worried about it. I think we're going to check in kind of at the end of the year and see where we're at with it. I'm hoping he has a really strong September and kind of puts himself in a good spot going into next year. This is the next guy who is just he just keeps hitting. He just keeps hitting. Tim Elko. I'll let you take the floor on this one to start, Dylan.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what level you put him at. Timmy Tanks is always going to hit. Like I was looking at his Fangraphs page a couple days ago. In every single affiliate that he's spent more than 40 games at, he's put up a 125 or better WRC plus. Like once he gets settled and gets comfortable at an affiliate or at each level, he's gonna mash. And we're seeing it in Charlotte firsthand. He's got 25 games under his belt in Charlotte, and he's betting 276, 339, 505 for a 115 WRC plus. Tim Elko is a guy that is going to strike out a lot, but he hits the ball so incredibly hard that, and he hits it consistently hard, which is the key. It sort of masks any strikeout rate, which I don't want to say a 30% strikeout rate is good, but when you're hitting the ball 105, 107 miles an hour at least once a game, you can afford to strike out a little bit more. But the one thing I will say in his AAA stint is that he's walking more than double his number at any other stop in his career. It's an 8.7. The or no, he did walk a decent amount in Kannapolis in 2023, but it's an 8.7%, which is great for Tim Elko.
Yeah, that is the thing I was about to mention for Elko, right? 10 walks across 25 games now in Charlotte, as opposed to only 21 walks in 91 games in Birmingham this season. That's a huge improvement. That's going to be the thing for him. You know, if he is going to take the next step and become a big league player next year, which he's going to have a shot to do, because right now you've got Gavin Sheets and Andrew Vaughn. I can almost guarantee at least those guys, both of them are going to be leaving this season. I don't see a world where the White Sox go into 2025 with both those guys on the roster, in which case, if Elko can start to walk a little more, then you start to see a little bit of a path to big leagues. And it's crazy because I've never been a huge believer, to be perfectly honest with you. And I've said that before. I love Elko. He's a great dude. He hits the crap out of the ball. It's hard for me to buy into that type of swing and miss. And those types of, some of the swings he takes are really uncompetitive. There's times where he'll have swings against breaking pitches that are just, it's just trying to get a bat on the ball and it's not really seeing the pitch well. But if he's able to start walking more, that can help offset, a 30% strikeout rate. So there's some give and take there. It's still a tough profile, but Elko just hits and keeps hitting. 15 home runs on the season now after, not having many the first beginning of the season, right? He does a lot of things well. He really does. He plays a good first base too. So Elko's going to have a shot to get some big league innings in 2025, and he deserves it the way he's been hitting for 2 years straight now. So
definitely. I think that if one of Andrew Vaughn or Gavin Sheets are off the roster like we expect, I think that he's probably going to take their spot, like you were saying.
Yeah, 100%. Let's head down to Birmingham. It's been tough sledding for Birmingham since they lost, most of their roster in the first half, unfortunately. Yeah. But there are some players that have been really impressive. Some guys that have been great all season, in addition to some guys that have really stepped up recently and taken a step forward. We'll start with the guy himself. Schultz, top left-hand prospect in baseball, the top prospect in the White Sox organization, and someone that, Schultz is the talent is off the charts. We know it. What have you kind of seen in terms of development throughout this season from Schultz so far?
I think that we're seeing a guy who's less reliant on the strikeout. As much as we've seen him strike out a ton of guys, I think that we're seeing him sort of lean into the whole, all right, I'm going to throw a pitch here. He's going to hit a weak ground ball to the second baseman, and I'm going to get out of the inning in 11, 12 pitches, which he wasn't that guy last year. We were seeing him strike out, 9, 10 hitters in 4 innings, but he was throwing like 60, 70 pitches. And I think now he's working a little bit more efficiently, and we're seeing a guy who's not going to walk a lot of guys. I think he hasn't walked 3 batters in a game since April 20th. So he's got command. And since I'm bringing up the 3 rule, or 3, basically Noah Schultz has not allowed 3 earned runs in a game since his second start, April 13th against in high A, by the way. I believe that was the Rays high A affiliate, because I remember Xavier Isaac hit a home run off him.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. But since then, he has gone 2, 1, or 0 earned runs in all of his starts. He has not allowed 3 earned runs in Birmingham at all.
Yeah, and for more context to what Schultz has been doing lately, his last 6 starts, 1 earned run, 1 singular earned run in his last 6 starts for Noah Schultz.
Yeah.
It comes in different ways too. That's what you kind of noted at, but it's not the same type of start every time. Schultz is able to have good starts every start with different types of outcomes. Sometimes it's more strikeouts. Sometimes he's more forcing ground balls. Sometimes it's just soft contact, little throwing the bat out pop-ups, right? There's different ways he can get guys out. And as that changeup continues to develop, there's even more to it. He doesn't need it half the time, but when he does need it, and he needs to mix up from the fastball slider combination, he's able to go to it more confidently than he did much of last year in his limited innings last year, right? So we're going to get almost 100 innings out of Noah Schultz this year, Dylan. And that is really exciting, because this is a guy he's been limited to 4 innings all season. He hasn't thrown him into the 5th inning at all season, but he's making every single start. He looks good. He's really, really limiting contact. I mean, one earned run in the last 6 starts. In those 6 starts, a total of 10 hits, I believe, in the last 6 starts, right? So it's nasty stuff. It is really impressive to see so many different ways that he can attack hitters and just make things happen. This is a guy who, there is a reason he's the best left-handed pitching prospect in baseball, and it's very clear that he's the best prospect in this system right now. We have really, really high expectations for Schultz, but we also, know that it's a process, and it is about keeping him healthy and keeping him continuing to improve, and that is the focal point. He's going to finish out the year in Birmingham. He's going to start a playoff game, that's for sure, and it's really exciting just to watch the way this guy's evolving in the past year or two.
Yeah, I think that he's sort of hit everybody's expectations for him out of the park this year. I should probably find a better analogy for a pitcher than that. Mm-hmm. But basically, he's sort of exceeded everything that we've expected from him this year. He's been healthy. He's, like you said, hasn't missed a start, which is huge, because he only threw 27 innings last year, something like that. He's up to 76.2. Yeah, and he's been he hasn't slowed down. Like you were saying, 1 earned run in his last 6 outings. That's great for a guy who hasn't pitched more than 30 professional innings in his entire career.
Yeah, 100%. Schultz is really exciting. Another guy that has, one of our top prospects ranked as, I believe, the seventh prospect on the FutureSox top 30, has found something. Jairo Iriarte is someone that we came in with really high expectations as the second piece in that Cease trade. He started in that amazing rotation in Birmingham. He's the only guy still remaining from the beginning of the season in that Birmingham rotation. But Iriarte has figured some stuff out. After a start on July 1st, Iriarte gave up 5 earned runs on 10 hits on July 1st. He had 19 days without a start as he went to Chicago. He was working with Brian Bannister, then the All-Star break. He missed 2 straight weeks of making starts, comes back on July 20th, and now in 7 starts since that, 2.5 week break from pitching live games, Iriarte has allowed a total of 6 earned runs across his last 7 starts, and has been really, really, really good. The pitcher that we kind of have dreamed on and thought, Iriarte could reach. The command is still definitely iffy. There's games this past start, he didn't give up a run this last start, but he walked 6 guys. So there's some give and take there with Iriarte, but in general, his stuff is playing really well lately, and he's attacking the zone in a way that, hopefully it results in more strikes, but he looks more confident with all of his stuff and generally not letting hitters make good contact on him because the stuff is playing up better than it did early in the season. And I think there's still even more to kind of figure out for Iriarte moving forward.
Yeah, you mentioned that sort of 7-start stretch after he worked in Chicago with Bannister and then had the All-Star break. Out of those 7 starts, 5 of them have been quality starts. Like, it's not like he's going 4 or 5 innings. He's going 6 strong innings, and he's not allowing runs. So if he can continue to do that, I think that we sort of were like on the fence if he would be a starter or not. He's absolutely earned the right to say he's a starting pitcher going forward.
100%. And it's going to come down to the command for him. Like, this is a guy that if he can reduce the walk rate, you're looking at a really, really exciting starting pitching prospect. It's just going to be about continuing to find more command, especially with his off-speed stuff. If he can really start to locate his off-speed more in the zone as opposed to just swing pitches, right? If he can get more of those sliders in the zone, his slider is an excellent pitch. Every time I watch him, I really note how much depth he has on his slider, and it's always been kind of his bread and butter off-speed pitch. But if he can start getting those sliders in the low corners of the zone as opposed to just out of the zone, that's something that really takes his game to the next level. Like Schultz, kind of similarly, the changeup is showing some evolution, but it'd be nice to see Iriarte take another step with that changeup because that would really kind of complete his arsenal and make him a little bit more of a well-rounded pitcher if he can get those in for a strike, and that would also help limit the walk rate. So another guy that we're really excited about, but it's been a lot of positive signs. It's not perfect. You see 6 walks, you see 4 walks in games, and it's a little scary, right? But there's a lot of positive signs, and he's not allowing nearly the same amount of contact that he did earlier in the season. Going down into the bullpen in Birmingham before we get over to a few hitters, 2 guys I want to talk about, very different types of relievers here. The first one is Peyton Pallette. Peyton Pallette was moved to the bullpen a few months ago, and like we've talked about, both of us have been tweeting about this for months, has been the best relief pitcher in this entire farm system for the last 2 months since he got moved into a bullpen role, and looks like a legitimate back-end potential reliever moving forward. And then a different guy in Zach Franklin, who is very under the radar, not someone that I think gets much energy or attention at all, but was a mid-round draft pick last year by the White Sox, and was always kind of going to be a reliever. Had a slow start to his minor league career, but now is already up in Birmingham after a recent promotion again, and looks like a really legit relief prospect. Why don't you start with Pallette and tell us just like how good Pallette has been in his bullpen role?
Yeah, so Peyton Pallette got moved to the bullpen on July 5th, or July 5th was his first outing out of the bullpen. Since then, he's thrown 27 2/3 innings. Would you like to guess what his ERA is?
I'm going to go 0.85. I don't have it pulled up, so this is a straight guess.
It's lower than that. It's a 0.65 ERA in 27 2/3 innings. And it's 2 earned runs, and one of them came in his first outing. So since that 2-inning outing on July 5th, he's gone 25 2/3 innings, 1 earned run. And he's doing it with not 39% strikeout rate. It's 39 strikeouts to 6 walks in 27 2/3 innings, which for Pallette, it's insane because he's always had the stuff. It was always about the command for Pallette, and we have sort of been saying for the past 2 years that, like, oh well, if he doesn't work out in the rotation, he's always got a dominant closer fallback option, which we're seeing now is very, very true.
Yeah. And what I'm curious with Pallette, so for one more context thing to those stats, in addition to only giving up 2 runs since being a reliever, not a single run allowed in August. In August, he's thrown 14 innings, only 5 hits, 0 runs, 17 strikeouts. So it's just ridiculous stuff lately. Since going to Birmingham, he's thrown 2 games there, 1 hit allowed, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, no runs, right? It's just, the numbers are insane. What I'm curious about with Pallette, he has been throwing 2 innings every time he comes on the mound out of the bullpen for the most part. Do you think there's a chance back to being a starter potentially?
It depends, because while I do really, really believe in Pallette's ability to just be a pitcher, I think that he's got the stuff to be a pitcher just in general. It doesn't matter where. I think that you sort of take the success that you're getting out of the bullpen right now, and I don't want to say you run with it, but if he can be that 7th, 8th inning stretch guy out of the bullpen, it's a very valuable position to be in, and you're still providing value, and it's better than being a starter that probably wouldn't have made it past high A if he had continued on the track that he was going down, which was a lot of walks, a lot of walks, not a lot of hits, but you're giving up a lot of runs. So I believe Elijah's internet has cut out, or it's been spotty all day, so I knew that this was going to happen. So the next guy we're going to talk about is Zach Franklin. Zach Franklin out of Mizzou. Shout out MIZ. That's where I'm from, or that's where I'm going to school right now. But Zach Franklin is a name that I'm not sure a lot of people know too much about, only because he was a late round draft pick, and he was only signed for $10,000. So he's a guy where, you're not gonna see his name on the whole underrated prospects in the White Sox system, but he really is, and he's a reliever that's probably not gonna end up being a starter like we saw Pallette did, but in his 44 and 2/3 innings in the White Sox system this year, he's got an ERA under 3.7, and he's doing it striking out a ton of guys. And the fastball with Franklin is legit. It's got like one of the highest swinging strike rates on any fastball in the minor leagues. And for a reliever to have a good fastball, you can almost throw whatever breaking pitch you want, and it's gonna play perfectly off it. So I believe you're muted.
Appreciate you taking over with Franklin there. We're good now. But, this is a guy that, like you said, the fastball's been elite. There was a fun Baseball America note about some of the best pitches in the minor leagues a little while ago that I ended up reading and saw that. Mm-hmm. I was surprised to see Franklin on there, honestly. It's not a guy that I expected to have metrics that jump off the board. His fastball has been excellent. It has been one of the fastballs you'll see, honestly. So I'm excited to see kind of where things take him, and I think he's going to continue to rise quickly through the system, honestly.
Yeah, it's sort of been like an up and down. I want to say up and down season for him, because he started off the year he didn't start off the year terribly, but he allowed some hard contact. But then since then, it's been great. He made the jump to Birmingham. Since then, he's thrown 4 innings, hasn't allowed a run, hasn't walked a guy too, which is big. Is he didn't have? I want to say he had poor command in Winston, but it wasn't like. I keep on bringing up George Kirby, but you don't need a reliever to have great command. But he's striking out guys, not walking anybody, not allowing hard contact. So all around great things from Zach Franklin.
Yeah. 100%. Getting down to some hitters, we're going to kind of breeze through a few of these. Jacob Gonzalez briefly, and then DJ Gladney are 2 of the hitters in Birmingham that we want to talk about. Where are you at with Gonzalez? Because it's been an up and down year. We saw some improvements early in the season. It's been a tough going for him in Birmingham since he got there.
I think I'm exactly where I was on Gonzalez preseason. I think I only dropped him like 2 spots in my personal top 30, because I knew that this season probably wasn't going to be the best for him, because he's getting used to a new stance. He's in his first full year as a professional using wood bats. That whole combination of everything, it probably wasn't going to be the best for him. But in the month of August, he's got a 120 WRC plus, a 9.4% walk rate, and is only striking out 11.5% of the time. So I think I've seen him tweak his swing a little bit. It's not so much as like crouched over as he was pre or in the early months of the year, where he initially changed, like overhauled his swing from the sort of like wide, like lean back that he was doing in college. But now I think that he's like standing up straighter, and I think he's allowing himself to tap into a little bit more power. And we've seen that he hit 2 home runs in a game. I think it was a couple weeks ago, and he's slugging over 400 in the month of August, which we haven't seen that a lot from Gonzalez, other than his first like 2 or 3 weeks in Birmingham, where he just became the best player on the planet. But he's been bounced around in the Birmingham lineup, but he's been playing short and he's been playing it well. I think that it's not been the like knock it out of the park year that a lot of people might have expected for Gonzo, but it's been pretty much what I expected for him.
That's an interesting note. I think I've been a little more disappointed just after the start of the season than you have, maybe. The Birmingham thing is he does look better lately, which is good to see. It's definitely been a better month. I believe he's on like a 10-game hitting streak right now, or an 8-game hitting streak right now. So
Yeah.
He's definitely doing a lot of things well. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of what I kind of picked up on him at least earlier in July in Birmingham. There was a lot of B swings. I feel like he's not getting his best swing off sometimes, where it's just there's swings where he's kind of taking it to take it and to make contact, not necessarily to really impact the ball. That was kind of my thing that I noticed with him. Generally speaking, though, like, yes, let's give it some time. He was drafted last year. There's still plenty of time. He has looked much better in the past few weeks. It's going to be up and down, but I think you have a good take on it and a good way to look at it going into next year. DJ Gladney got up to Birmingham. This is someone who I just want to give a little bit of shine to, because he, has always had a lot of power. He's been in the system for a while. He was kind of a little bit of a breakout guy coming after his first year or two out of high school coming into the system. Gladney is someone who has really kind of elevated himself in a cool way, because he was playing well in Winston, but not amazing, and got promoted, more because of the, roster crunch and other guys coming up, and Casey Sauke went to Winston and all these other guys, and he got bumped to Birmingham. 9 games in Birmingham, 825 OPS for DJ Gladney, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 8 strikeouts across those 9 games, which is better than his strikeout rate was for much of the season in Winston. He looks good, and I'm excited to see kind of what this next level is for him, because he's been in Winston for, a year and a half now, almost 2 full seasons in Winston, and deserves a shot at Birmingham after he got a little taste of Birmingham in that Project Birmingham in 2022, but now he gets a real chance in Birmingham, and I think that's where he'll start next year.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of mentioned it right there. He's always had great power. Last year, hit 19 homers in just 96 games, and this year he's hit 12 in 76. So if he can get the bat on the ball more, I think that he can be that sort of, I don't want to say first base corner outfield type, because we've seen what happens when we play first baseman in corner outfield spots. But I mean, he's been a great bat in his limited time in High A and now Double A.
Yeah, 100%. It's a guy that's fun to watch, and it's going to be cool to see if he can kind of take another step forward next year. Still pretty young as a high school draft pick, so time for Gladney to establish himself in Birmingham. Going down to Winston-Salem, only 2 guys at this level we're gonna dive into. One is one of our favorite pitchers in this entire system. Aldrin Batista has been nothing but lights out since getting promoted to Winston-Salem. This is a guy who we knew early in the year, like there was really no reason for him to be in Kannapolis. After kind of 10 starts or so, it was pretty obvious that he could handle the level. The command is not perfect yet, but generally speaking, Batista was missing bats all the time in Kannapolis, and was, had some ups and downs, but looked like he was just too good for the level. Gets to Winston, it hasn't been a challenge at all. He's 4 starts in now, 21 innings pitched with only 3 runs allowed. 1 run was kind of a cheap run yesterday too. He was cruising through 5 and gave up a run right before he came out in the 6th. But it's four solid starts with only 1 run allowed in 3 different starts and none in the other. Right, so it's just very minimal anything allowed. 5 walks in those 4 starts and 23 strikeouts. Batista looks even better than he looked in Kannapolis. And this is a guy who I noticed, and I pointed this out to you when we were talking the other day, I think he feels more confident with his stuff than he did early in the season. I think he's really just trusting what he has and knowing he can throw things all over the zone and they're going to get whiff. His fastball has so much ride to it in a comparison to a normal fastball while still being up at a decent velocity point, but he really moves that fastball and is now at a point where he's comfortable throwing it high and low in the zone. You see him attacking guys high in the zone, getting it to ride in on their hands at a point where it becomes uncomfortable because it's drifting into righties. And then you see him low in the zone, just dropping those little sinkers in there right on the corners of the zone. So there's ups and downs with him. But in general, this is a guy that I think is one of the better young pitchers in the farm system.
Yeah, I think that he's probably one of the better trades of Rick Hahn's tenure, even though it was for cash that they did use, or that the Dodgers used to sign Hyung-Sok Jang, which he's been phenomenal this year, by the way. I just want to give a little shout out to him because we weren't going to use the money. So traded it and got a guy in Aldrin Batista where he's probably the I want to say third best arm in the system, because Grant Taylor is very good, and I think that if he was healthy, he could probably be a top 100 prospect if he was healthy. But he's definitely a top 15 prospect. Yeah, he's definitely a top 15 prospect in my eyes, at least in the system.
Yeah, I think we had him at 21st on our FutureSox rankings, but I have him a lot higher personally. Seeing him and his growth over the last month, even, since we started putting those rankings together, like what he's done in Winston since he's got there has really established in my mind that he can be a legit starting pitcher going forward. The command has been even better recently. The stuff is sharp. The slider is disgusting. I mean, he gets so much whiff on that slider lately. This is a guy who I'm really excited for, and I think we're going to see him in Birmingham at some point next year. Still, just 21 years old. Even going into next year, he'll still be 21. He turned 21 this season. So he's going to go into next year at 21 years old and potentially be in Birmingham to start the year or pretty soon after that. So really exciting stuff we've seen from Batista. William Bergolla, what have you noticed? This was the trade acquisition in the Tanner Banks trade from Philadelphia. For those listening that don't know a lot about him, Bergolla was an international signing out of Venezuela 2 years ago, over $2 million international signing. So a high level signing. Really just a contact speed type of guy, pretty minimal power for Bergolla, but you see a lot of really interesting hit tool with him, and a guy who's versatile in the infield and looks like he plays a pretty solid, middle infield. What are your thoughts on Bergolla so far since he came over a month ago?
Yeah, you sort of hit the nail on the head with contact and speed. So in his 21 games since being traded from the Phillies in Winston-Salem, as a 19-year-old, by the way, I want to point that out there. He is very young for the level. He's I believe the youngest Winston-Salem hitter currently there. Since Sammy Zavala turned 20. 307, 379, 360 for a 116 WRC plus. He's walking only 7.9% of the time, but he's striking out 9% of the time. So he's gonna put the ball in play. He's gonna make the defense make some plays on him, and he's gonna steal some bases too. In his 21 games, he already has 9 stolen bases, and that's compared to his 18 in 67 games with the Phillies earlier on this year. So he's gonna play probably second base going forward because he has one professional home run in his entire life. But he's definitely a second base profile, at least for me going forward. I think that his skill set would be best utilized there at second. But he's a guy where you always need those sort of fun, speedy contact guys in the system that you might end up having something with them.
Yeah, 100%. It's been a solid season. He's a good pickup again for Tanner Banks, right? Like that's a really good add to the system. Even if he's organizational depth as a contact-oriented middle infielder, like that's a good guy to get for a reliever that meant nothing to the next 2 years, right? So a good acquisition to the team, another guy to add into that Winston lineup, and he should remain in Winston probably as one of the leaders of that lineup next year. Going down to Kannapolis, this is a team that's about to make a playoff push. There's a lot of excitement there. They have added 10 2024 draft class members, whether two undrafted guys and 8 draft picks over the past few weeks. I got there in Canny and was able to see all the new hitters that got there. A bunch of new pitchers just got there this past week, so I didn't get to see those guys in person, unfortunately, but a lot of talent, pitching and hitting side that's been added to this roster. And some guys that have already been there that we really like and are really excited about. We're going to have time to dive into some of the young new pitchers later. We've only seen them all throw once or twice. Once we get a little bit more, I think in a week or two from now, we're really going to have fun talking about, some of those arms down there. They've got guys like, Pierce George, Justin Sinibaldi. There's a lot of fun guys down there in terms of the pitching side of things. But for now, some pitchers that are already in the organization. Let's talk about Tanner McDougal a little. It's been a rough season. This is a guy who was, a high-end draft pick, pretty well regarded 5th rounder out of high school, looked like one of the better upside arms in the White Sox system. Coming off a TJ, it's been a rough going for McDougal. Last year, he looked decent at times last year, still battled a lot of command issues, but the stuff was pretty solid considering he was coming off a Tommy John. This year, more of the same, right? The stuff is there. The command has not been there. He comes down from Winston about a month ago. He's shown some good signs, though, since he's been back in Canny, huh?
Yeah, he's thrown 22 innings across 5 starts since being demoted. I don't want to say demoted because the Winston-Salem rotation is great.
It's a reset.
Yeah. It's either you go down to Canny and work on stuff that they believe that he can fix, or go the Peyton Pallette route and be sent to the bullpen. But I'm glad that McDougal did this, because if he's on and he's healthy and he's been showing signs of life recently, he's one of the higher upside arms in the lower levels. So in 22 innings, he's struck out 28 guys, only walked 11, which you compare that to his 44 in his other 66 innings outside of that. It's an upgrade, or it's an improvement on the rest of his year, which I don't want to say he's destined for the bullpen like Pallette, because he's a big body too. Like, he's 6'5", like 220. Like, he's got a starter's frame, and he can earn his spot back in the rotation in the higher levels.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's still stuff to dream on there, definitely stuff to look into, and I think he just needed that reset in Kannapolis. Ricardo Brizuela is a pitcher that we got to talk about in Kannapolis. This guy has been exceptional. Brizuela is someone that has been really, really good in Canny this year. He was great in the ACL and goes to Canny, had a really rough literal first inning. And I say that very directly because he gave up, I believe it was 7 runs in his first inning at Kannapolis. And since then, that was an 8-run start with 11 hits allowed in his first ever, affiliated ball start. Since then, Brizuela has allowed a total of 6 runs now across his last 7 starts in Kannapolis. So he's made 8 starts in Kannapolis. The first one was rough, but 6 runs now allowed in his last 7 starts at Kannapolis. August has a 1.29 ERA across 4 starts in August. The strikeouts are pretty high. The walks are pretty low. Brizuela is probably more of a floor guy than a ceiling guy, but he looks really good. I saw a really nice start from him when I was out there in Canny, and in general, he just looks like a pretty well-rounded quality pitcher at the lower levels.
Yeah, like you said, he had a rough introduction to Canny, but since then, I mean, he's been lights out. He's probably been their best pitcher since he got promoted, since that first start. And like you were saying, he's not going to be the highest upside guy. He's not going to have the Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith type upside. But if he can be like a solid organizational depth piece, that's perfectly fine by me, because he started off the year in Arizona and as one of the older guys in the level at 21, and then he goes out and puts up a 2.3 ERA for them, and now he is doing more of the same in Kannapolis, and he can probably start off the year in Winston next year if he finishes strong.
Yeah, 100%. A nice development to keep an eye on for sure. On the hitting side, we've got 3 hitters in particular that we want to talk about. The draft class in general has been fun to watch because there's 6 new hitters that are rotating in this lineup. The lineup is almost, there's too many guys in this lineup, frankly, to get bats for. And that's what's tricky, because you've got holdovers like Ryan Burroughs and George Wolko and Ronnie Hernandez, who have had really solid seasons, and you want to keep them developing. But you've also got all these new draft class guys to work into the lineup there. They are in a good spot heading into the playoffs. They definitely have plenty of talent for a playoff run, in addition to the fact that, these are just guys you want to watch develop. The first guy we got to talk about is Sam Antonacci. Sam Antonacci, after a week and a half of kind of transition where he wasn't hitting the ball that well, looks like one of, if not the best hitter in this lineup in the past week or two. I put out a tweet that he had a 6-game stretch with 8 hits and 8 walks. This guy is just really advanced. You can tell the feel to hit is at a high level. That's what he was drafted to be. He was one of the best players in the country from just a bat tool, hitting tool, perspective this past year, right? He just hits. The guy knows how to hit. He knows how to watch his pitches, pick his spots, and just line drives into the, up the middle, into the holes. That's just all he does, and that's his game.
Yep. In 14 games, he has 13 walks to only 7 strikeouts. Nice. That's even after that week and a half stretch where I think he was hitting like 180. Now he's hitting 290 and with a 161 WRC plus. He's not going to hit for much power. He has only hit 3 extra base hits. They've all been doubles, but he gets on base and then he steals bases. He's got 3 bags in 14 games, and that's going to be the type of player he is. He's going to be that contact speed second baseman where the contact is really, really good.
Yeah. And the approach is good. And that's what you can get away with. You'd want him to tap into more power. And I think he has the frame and strength where he talked to me about how he really didn't learn how to get strong until he was in college because he had no offers. He went to junior college. He figured out I need to get bigger and I need to get stronger if I'm going to be an effective player. And he did that throughout junior college and throughout his time at Coastal and D1, right? But this is a guy that you hope can tap into some more power as he continues to grow. But at the same time, the contact with his ability to pick his pitches and really, really be patient at the plate, 13 walks to 7 strikeouts, right? That's the type of player you're going to get. And obviously those numbers are going to come down at the higher levels. But I think Antonacci is a very clear candidate to open the year in Winston and be someone that you hope can move through the system quickly, also with a lot of versatility. He looks very comfortable at second, third, and short. So you've got a guy with a good enough arm to play all over the infield, quick hands, good experience. He might not be a shortstop long-term, but if you have a guy that can play third and second with the ability to be a backup at shortstop, that's a pretty useful, versatile piece to have. And I do think he opens the season in Winston-Salem, honestly.
Definitely. I think that he can sort of be that, I don't want to say Lenny and Sosa type where he's playing second, third, and short. But if that's what he ends up being, at least defensively, I think that's, like you were saying, a very valuable piece. So I love Antonacci. I like the pick when we drafted him. So.
Yeah, 100%. TJ McCants is the next one we're going to talk about in terms of the draft pick. TJ McCants is someone who, has a ton of college experience, 5th round, 5th year senior type of draft pick, right? So they're able to get him on a steal. But this is a guy who, we really like his swing. I think both of us have kind of noticed that we really like what he does, just his aggressive, kind of powerful type of swing where he really is just attacking the ball almost. 2 home runs in his first handful of games. Like I was saying, there is competition for at-bats. So McCants is a guy that had a little bit of a minor injury. He's only played 8 games, but when he's been on the field, he's shown a lot of just powerful upside. He does swing a lot. He does strike out a good amount. But at the same time, I think McCants is someone who is really athletic and capable of playing a good center field, in addition to just having that kind of power upside that you can hope can continue to be honed in on as he grows.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the more powerful bats in that Canyon lineup. I would say he's probably the most powerful outside of George Walco. Or maybe not with Lyle Miller Green there now, but McCants is he's a power speed guy who's going to play a great defensive center field. He started every single game in center field for Alabama this past spring, and he followed that up with playing a great defensive center field in his first game in Kannapolis. I think he made a diving or a running catch near the wall in his first game, and then also hit a home run in his first professional at bat too, which was pretty awesome to see. But I really like the makeup of McCants. I think that he's a guy where if you can cut out some of the swing and miss issues, I think that he's a guy that we could really see skyrocket.
Yeah, for sure. The last guy we're going to talk about from this draft class, there's plenty of other guys, and we're going to have more time when these guys get more at-bats. The reality is, like we said, they're not everybody's getting at-bats every day, so it's hard to kind of, enjoy some of the performances. And we're going to see more from Nathan Archer, from Lyle Miller Green, from Jackson Appel. There's a lot of guys we're going to get to see more of over the next few weeks and going into next year especially. But Alec Makarewicz is someone we want to touch on a little bit because this is an undrafted guy who, has a ton of college experience coming out of North Carolina State, is someone who, looked like was a really good hitter throughout his college career, but, 5th year senior, played coming in at 23 years old. The White Sox went, from talking to AMAC is what he's, generally called, is I'm talking with him. It sounds like he literally was signed by the White Sox within an hour of the draft ending. He I think a lot of people thought he was going to get drafted. It sounds like the White Sox expected him to get drafted and they had him on their board. And the fact that he was available to be signed as an undrafted free agent was an instant signing basically. And then you see him getting more at-bats than any of these other draft picks so far. He has the most at-bats of any of these 6 hitters that joined the White Sox, joined Kannapolis a few weeks ago. There's something there very clearly. There's clearly something that the White Sox see and hope that he can be kind of one of those quick rising Tim Elko type guys, despite his age, because he's getting at bats all the time at third and first base right now. What do you think you've seen from AMAC so far?
I mean, he's definitely earned the right to get at bats. He's got a 14-game hitting streak going on as we speak. He's batting 300, 380, 415 for what is that, a 795 OPS. So I mean, he's definitely a hitter first before anything else. He's
Yeah.
He's gonna hit. He's gonna get on base. It's an 11% walk rate right now. Granted, small sample size, only 18 games, but he's not striking out much at all either. It's only 21.5% strikeout rate. So if he can be a Tim Elko type, I'm all for it. I love Tim Elko. I think that AMAC is he's been one of the guys that I've been pleasantly surprised with in Kannapolis so far.
Yeah, 100%. He really hasn't tapped into his power yet either. He's a powerful
Right.
dude. You can see his swing is kind of generated to really generate some launch, and he's had some doubles, but he only has one home run so far, and I expect that number to go up in the next 2 weeks. So this is a guy that is switch hitting, powerful corner infielder. I think the White Sox targeted him immediately as an undrafted guy that they believed should have been a late round draft pick by somebody, right? And they didn't necessarily
Definitely.
have the room to draft him, but he's someone that is very clearly valued as an undrafted signing and is getting the innings that show his value, right? So I expect AMAC to continue to get innings and someone that's at least worth following. There's plenty of guys that go undrafted and become legit prospects within the system or solid pieces. So he's another guy we're going to keep an eye on. That is all the players we have for today. We are going to have plenty of other time. Dylan will be back at some point, I'm sure. We'll have time in the future to talk about all of these things that once the minor league season wraps up and we've got playoffs in Canny, but then sooner than later Winston and Canny are going to be done. We'll do full kind of season reviews for each affiliate, whether it's in one podcast or spread across a few of them. So we'll have plenty of content coming up. Make sure to check out the FutureSox top 30. That is the consensus prospect. We will also have individual top 30s with our own little thoughts and tidbits on just kind of our own personal lists. Dylan and I both have pretty similar lists, but we got a few differences here and there in the prospects we view. So keep up to date with all of our stuff at FutureSox. Ian Eskridge does a great job with all the video. The best way to catch up with prospect videos. There is literally no other place to find prospect highlights like the FutureSox X page right now. So make sure to keep up with all of us. You can find Dylan at NotCease on X. You can find me at Elijah EV8. We are going to be bringing plenty of prospect content through the rest of this minor league season. Into the offseason too. We'll have a ton of fun offseason topics. I'm starting to brainstorm some ideas to dive into in the offseason as we start to kind of look towards the next few years of White Sox baseball. So Dylan, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blast as always. I can't wait for my next time.
100%, man. We will talk to you next time on the